to me, the whole idea between communicating a message to somebody is to make sure that you communicate it in such a way that it's understood clearly in the least amount of words as possible. That's always my goal,
Right.
because the sales process, I may have mentioned to you before, if you put an ice cube in somebody's hand and say, I'm only going to talk to you until the ice cube melts, and by the end of that, you'll understand what I mean. That's the way it needs to be approached. And in some cases now with social media, the period of time that you have is even shorter because they'll swipe right or scroll and you're just part of a feed. So how do I make an impact as quickly as possible to have them retain the knowledge that I need them to understand?
I'm Greg Forzani with Forzani Business Education, and this is the More Profit, Less Stress podcast, where we provide insights for more profit and less stress in your business now with the purpose of turning it into a valuable asset. Welcome to the More Profit, Less Stress podcast. I'm Greg Forzani. My guest today is Todd Fife, who's one of our coaches. And so Todd, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thanks, Greg. Todd Fife. I live out on the west coast of Canada on Vancouver Island. I'm a sales professional, been in sales for the better part of my professional career. And prior to that, I was in teaching mainly outdoor education. And have had the opportunity to work for a number of different footwear companies. And during my stay at places like Reebok, Rockport, Clark's, I had the pleasure of working with retailers and accounts all across Canada, all the way from small mom and pop shops, all the way up to department stores like the Bay and Eaton's and Forzani Group, the R&R division. So yeah, enjoyed that time, and then shifted gears and moved into real estate for about 20 years of my life. And so I left a footwear family behind and built a career in real estate. And yeah, that's led me here back to a place where I can make my time a little bit more predictable.
Nice. Hence the name, Predictably.
Hence the name, Predictably.
So sorry, I got to go back to something you talked about a minute ago. So when you were in sales with shoes, there must have been like one retailer in particular that you just loved working with. It was like freaking amazing, right?
Yeah, there was one in particular that generated quite a few memories that just can't go away. But yeah, working with you guys at the Forzani Group in the R&R division, it was certainly an entertaining and pleasurable time. It made the job a lot more fun.
Yeah, we definitely had some fun.
We did.
I remember we used to get together. I'd put together a team from our group. You'd put together a team of reps and we'd do a go-kart race. Remember we used to book the track out and have 5 each and race 10 cars.
That's right.
I miss those days, actually. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so purpose of today's podcast, I thought it'd be great because we haven't done a podcast yet where we really kind of just talk sales the whole time. And obviously sales is a subject that everybody thirsts to know more knowledge. And so I just thought it'd be great to bring you in as a guest because as you just said, you got a whole career of sales and selling and you've done it in different industries. So yeah, that'd be great to get into a conversation of sales. So let's maybe start with, there's lots to talk about, but I want to start with something different. You've been in sales. You worked like in footwear, you worked for some big companies where there's hundreds of salespeople, maybe even thousands. Tell me something, because I know you attack each industry you get into, you attack it and try and attack it from a different perspective. Like, from the outside looking in, it seems like you'll work with what works, but then you always try and find that golden nugget or something that's different, or maybe go a little against the grain and find something that works better. So maybe to start with that, like in sales, what did you, I know when you got into footwear sales, you attacked it differently. So what's a couple things you walked into those industries, both footwear and real estate, and said, I'm going to try and do this a little different here because I think it'll work better.
Yeah. I don't know where that came from, honestly, but, I think innately I've always tried to find ways to be understood by the people that I'm conveying a message to. So, and like I mentioned, I was in a teaching background prior to selling. I'd had some retail experience where our family had a sporting goods store, and I worked for some retailers in the small town where I lived, but I wasn't a sales professional. I was a clerk and understood how to go get things for people when they asked for them. But from a teaching perspective, I think that's where I really started to switch into how do I convey this skill or bit of knowledge to this group so that everybody picks it up and I see their eyes light up when I've hit the right words. And I had the benefit of being in the type of position where I had a curriculum and the groups would cycle through. So they'd be there for 3 to 5 to 7 days, and then you'd get a fresh group. So you could retest your pitch on how to convey the message. And this is across thousands of different activities or topics, but you keep getting that chance to start again and reword it, or use a different visual cue, or use a different aid to get your point across. And to me, the whole idea between communicating a message to somebody is to make sure that you communicate it in such a way that it's understood clearly in the least amount of words as possible. That's always my goal,
Right.
because the sales process, I may have mentioned to you before, if you put an ice cube in somebody's hand and say, I'm only going to talk to you until the ice cube melts, and by the end of that, you'll understand what I mean. That's the way it needs to be approached. And in some cases now with social media, the period of time that you have is even shorter, because they'll swipe right or scroll and you're just part of a feed. So how do I make an impact as quickly as possible to have them retain the knowledge that I need them to understand? It started from that education perspective for me, and then I pulled that over into the sales side of things, where really I needed to study my inventory and understand my inventory clearly. So not just the product, but how much I owned of it, and when I had more of it coming, so that I really knew my inventory intimately. Then I had to go out and learn my customers. So I'd go out and study my customers and what are they looking for? What do they talk about? What's important to them? And for some people, honestly, it was just showing up with a pizza and some bottled water and, having a chit chat with the staff and then taking off. And that was it. They didn't want to talk about business. They didn't want to talk about margins. They didn't want to talk about anything. Just, show up and make my staff smile. And that's all I need from
Right.
other people. And you guys were included in this, wanted to dig into the numbers. And so understanding the customer, what they want, understanding your inventory and on what they want, and then going home and building your communication around those two buckets that you have to pay attention to. Build your communication so that you're speaking in a language with the fewest number of words possible to get your point across. And
Right.
so that's always been my goal is, figure out how to be understood with a small number of words. And if they don't hear it the first time, repeat what you said until they hear it. So
Right. Totally relate to that. I want to go back to a couple of things you said there. So one, man, am I on the same page I think with sales, it's such an underrated skill set to say, be an expert at your product or service. Like if you're an expert at whatever it is you're selling, it's so much easier to sell. And I don't know, I almost don't even like using the word sales. It's like provide a service, try and help people, right? And that's what you're saying. Like put yourself in their shoes, understand what they need, and try and help. But you can't do that if you don't understand your product or service. Like you're totally behind the eight ball in that case. So yeah, love you said that. Question, because you talked about different sizes of businesses you've spoken to, or well, sold to. Did you find there was a difference? Like, and I know this is probably a very general question, but like for anybody listening to this, some businesses sell to big customers, like corporations, some sell to little mom and pop stores, some sell to some in the middle that might be as sophisticated as a corporation, but they're still mom and pop. Is there, and I know you sort of already answered this a bit, but maybe expand on specifically like corporation versus mom and pop, for lack of better comparison. Like what kind of tips or advice would you give, because you've dealt with both, on how to approach them differently? Like what are some things to think about?
yeah, well, I'll give you an analogy because and then I'll go back and answer the question. So selling real estate, sitting in my office and my client arrives and, Jim shows up because he's the one who's booked the appointment, but then his wife, Susan, comes in with him. And it's like, oh, okay, great. I didn't know both of you were coming. That's excellent. And then in comes little Bobby, little Susie, little Mary, and little Johnny. And
And the dog.
it's like, we've got the whole gang here. That's going to be a lot of fun. And so now we're going to be showing houses and trying to convey the message and make sure that the entire gang is engaged in some way, because if little Johnny gets distracted and causes Jim or Susan to be pulled off message, then all of a sudden I can't get my message conveyed before the ice cube melts. And dealing with a corporation, I may have to visit head office where we go in and we talk business. We're talking about the fundamentals of how my widget is going to work well in your location, make you money, meet your margin and turnover expectations, so that I'm a productive product in your store. But then I've got to visit your store and go see Johnny, because I've got to make sure that he's on board with the messaging and not distracting from what you're trying to focus on, which is the margin and sell through. I've got to keep Johnny happy with some promotions and contests and pizza and coffee now and then, and whatever it is that is going to make him laugh and stay happy and focused on what we're doing. That's the corporation where my role gets divided, and I need to very
Right.
understand which uniform I'm wearing when I show up. Am I in the head office? Am I not in the head office? What's the scripting going to be today? Like, what are we talking about? What's on the agenda? So that's the main difference. Honestly, sometimes the bigger the corporation gets, the less they understand or are paying attention to the numbers side of things.
Right.
Not always, but many times you wouldn't think that it should be that way, but there were certainly some larger companies that ought to have been paying attention to things a little bit better than the reams of sell-through reports that they had on their desk that they weren't reading. And
Right.
there was other guys like you that could flip open a laptop and scroll down quickly and see a number on the performance of, a certain SKU and a certain style and size. Others didn't have that ability or weren't paying attention to that. So sometimes we had to do that for them as well, do the analytics in advance of the meeting to go in and be able to pitch our position and build some sales.
So what emphasis would you put on salespeople to say, A, you should know your numbers, and B, will it make it, because you just said something there, will it make a difference in your relationship with that customer if you can actually show them numbers in their best interest and how they can improve them, whatever, on something that they may not be very comfortable with? Or let me rephrase, on something they may not be very good at. Because they're looking at like the pretty shoe or the whatever somebody's selling, the service, whatever it is, they're going, oh, that'll look really good on someone traveling on an airplane to Italy or whatever. And that's all great, but being able to help them and show them how to be more profitable. What's your advice on that? Is that an important thing?
Yeah, sure. To a guy like me or a guy like you that gets fixated on, okay, what's best for the business here? What's going to deliver the most profit dollars to the bottom line so that we keep the business healthy. Sometimes there are business owners out there that are entrepreneurs that think out of the other side of their brain. And that was a challenge for me because they approached it from a position that was less logical to me and more gut instinct and more emotional reasoning, and where you couldn't quantify their decision making or their results on a report. Well, you could at the end when it all blew up at the end, and it's like, well, none of this stuff sold. And I'm like, yeah, those are all the things that you chose and that I recommended that we not put in because our best sellers are these ones. And then at the end of the season, it's still your fault. You're owning it, but they chose,
Right.
they made the product selection. So to get to your question, yeah, you really need to have them understand that you want to do the best thing for their business. And if you are customer centric, where you're worried about their best interest and how it relates to your product, then honestly, if that's the way you learn how to sell, or if those are the types of sales representatives that you want to deal with in your business, if you have suppliers, honestly, finding the people that want to put you first and using their product as a tool to get you there, those are the type of people that are going to run through fires and break down doors and run through walls to do whatever they can to make your business more successful. And it's not just load and go where, they drop off 12 cases of product and wait for you to phone for more. It's about dropping off those cases of product and making sure that as soon as they hit the floor, they're selling through so that they're picking up the phone and calling you for more replenishment quickly. And that's more work. And that's what stops a lot of salespeople from doing it, is
Right.
that it is more work. There is more follow up and follow through that has to happen there to monitor and then remind. You monitor, you see the results. It's like, I don't know if you noticed these results, but this SKU is really taking off for you. And it's like, yeah, I didn't notice that. It's like, this one's not. I'll tell you what we should do. Let's fine tune your inventory. Let's get rid of this one. Let me take some of this one back because our company could use it back. And let's start getting you more of what you need so that we can turn up the heat and get you more turnover on your inventory. That sort of back and forth between client and supplier ought to be happening more often.
Working together because if there's a win for the customer, it's a win for the vendor.
For sure it is.
Long term. I
Yeah.
love sorry, I was giggling inside because I saw a quote once, and actually there's a video of it in our curriculum, but of Jeffrey Gitomer, short video, and he's just like, lazy salespeople piss me off, and he gets all scrunchy faced and points at the camera. And when you were saying that, I'm like, oh my God, I totally agree. But it's true, right? If they're looking for the quick kill, generally speaking, it's like another phrase is farm versus, kill, right? That kind of analogy.
Yeah.
And you got to farm customers. You got to, I love it. Question, because of something you said a minute ago. From your experience, I guess question one, is there a difference in this? And then question two, if there is a difference, what tips do you have? But is there a difference between selling like higher end purchases, like service or product, whatever it is? Because you were in footwear, you sold lower end and higher end stuff. Real estate, for sure, you got lower end and higher end. But how do you approach those differently? And if you do, what are some tips there? Because, people that sell higher end stuff, is there a different approach? Is there a few things they should think about differently?
Yeah. Good question. Big question, and as you relate it to different products, it can really start to have an impact. The stereotypical Beverly Hills realtor that rolls up in a Mercedes and just came from the hair salon and the plastic surgeon's office and all of those sorts of things to look the part for the client that they're meeting, and they're wrapped up in it in such a way they're wrapped up in it in a way that they think they need to be able to make that pitch. Maybe it's what their clients are expecting to see when they roll up. And I think the takeaway from that is valid in that whether you're selling a product or service that is casual, it's high end, as you would say, or premium, should be showing up in such a way that, in my opinion, you're showing up in a capacity that is 1 to 1 3/4 level higher than what they expected to see you show up as.
Yeah, agreed.
And so if I'm selling welding, for example, and I have my welding outfit and my helmet and all of that stuff, I'm not going to show up wearing my welding gear to do the next sales pitch for the next client that I'm going to deal with. I'm going to show up, probably in a golf shirt and a pair of khakis and have a shower before I go and go and meet the client and be a level up from what they expect a welding guy to look like when he shows up.
Right.
At least then I'm commanding a little bit more attention, a little bit more respect, and so that we can go and talk about the business of the business, get that set aside, and then I can go put my welding gear on and go back to work. And so when I'm pitching shoes, if I have 3 calls to make that day, and one is to R&R and is a very casual type of store, and the next one is Harry Rosen down the hallway,
Right.
I'm looking for a phone booth where I can go and do a quick change where, I put my clip-on tie on and unpack my blazer and throw a jacket on so that I can go into the next session, because those are 2 different levels, and to be 3 layers overdressed for one customer and 2 layers underdressed for the next makes a big difference. And so that's in appearance, right? And I'm using appearance as the example here, but
it applies to what comes out of your mouth too, right?
your vocabulary and the quality of what you're trying to say. Are your words being delivered in such a way that the message is clear with a select few number of words? Is your volume and your intonation good? All of those things count as something as
Yeah.
to whether or not you get listened to or not listened to. And for Pete's sakes, if I have something in my nose, like some piece of jewelry and a couple up on my eyebrows, and those are, listen, no judgment here, but
Yeah. But
those would be
it's a real thing.
those would be detracting from the message that I was trying to convey. And so I would take all of that jewelry off and not wear it into my appointment and put it on later down the road. And so, yeah, when the goal is, back to my original point, when the goal is to get the point across as quickly as possible with as fewest number of words as possible, then everything counts, all the way from how you're dressed and how you say it, and the words that you choose and the volume that you use and everything.
Yeah, I love it. And I think if I picked up on, there's a bunch of nuggets there, but one of them that I would extra stress is like, are you building a relationship? Sorry, and it was earlier in that statement you went on, but you're building a relationship. Like, do they know you have your best interests? Because if they feel like you're just being a salesperson, people aren't stupid. They can pick up on that. And especially there's all sorts of different services that people buy, but if you're selling, I think people are extra aware of, am I being sold? Like, do they have my best interest at heart? So, and I know you said that a little while ago, but I wrote it down. I want to come back to it. I think that's so important. If it's like, if you're actually truly, genuinely, don't pretend to try and help people, actually help people, try and create the win-win, right? Because if you can create a win for them, then you get the win for you, because they're buying from you. If you can't find a win from you and they want everything for free, then it doesn't work. Yeah. But if you can find the win for them, try and help people, do what's in their best interest. And you even said this earlier, like, do some research, find out what's in their best interest, find out what they need. And if they understand you're trying to do that, then the relationship's good. And then there's a lot of trust built. And there's a lot of studies saying the 5 reasons people buy, number one's confidence, then that builds huge confidence. And as an example, like back in the days when we worked together, I had a lot of different companies and reps trying to sell me stuff. And honestly, I think I'm being nice if I said 75%, because it was probably more than that. But 75%, they're in it for the quick kill sales. And you could just tell, right? In fact, the old great name was they were shoe dogs, right?
No. That was a sad label.
I mean, it's funny, but it's actually really sad, because that means that's how they acted. Like, it was, and you could just tell they didn't really care. Like, I remember, sorry, I got to say this to validate the point. I remember when I first went from sporting goods to shoes, and I was meeting all the companies and reps for the first time. And I'll never forget the Echo rep at that time. So it was before JF, because JF was the guy you and I knew. Yeah. But the guy before that, in our very first meeting, I'm looking at this Echo shoe that's like apparently their number one shoe. Apparently, I don't know. That's what he said. And it's the ugliest shoe you've ever seen. And I'm like, wow, really? People buy that? He's like, let me put it this way. He says, out front in your parking lot is a BMW 5 Series, and that shoe paid for that car. And I'm just like, fuck, great. Really looking forward to this relationship. Like, wow. Hey, thanks for laying your cards on the table. Really glad you don't give a shit about me or my customer. You just want to buy your new sports car. But that stuff matters, right? I mean, it's a funny, goofy story, but that's the kind of stuff, like, I think a lot of salespeople, that's how they think, that's how they're wired. And I get it, those people, what word am I trying to look for that could be said on a podcast? They have a lot of, they're not very reserved. I want to say they have big balls, but so they'll go do the work, which is great, but they might not have a long lasting relationship with that customer, and they might not actually get the most out of that customer because they're so quick killed. And I think in today's world, that kind of salesperson's dead. Like, you need to build relationships. And that's what I enjoyed about our relationship. Like, we built a relationship where you were like, I trusted you. So if you gave suggestions and I'm like, not sure, but you were kind of pushing the suggestion. I'm like, okay, so it probably is in my best interest. It probably is one of your best selling shoes, even though I think it's ugly or whatever. So that's what you got to do with customers. I totally agree.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the real measure of the relationship is not on the first order that you place with me as a client. That is not how the relationship is going to be measured.
Right.
The relationship is going to be how long I can keep our relationship working by making you profitable, because you were one of the clients that paid attention to things like inventory turnover and profit and those sorts of things. So it became evident that if I was going to be in there long term that I needed to focus on what your priority was. And so I
Right.
focused on the 5-year plan. How do I build my brand into the store over 5 years and get to those numbers? And to the point where we started working together so closely that I would be seeing the lineup of product, the new shoe lineup early in the season, and I'd already be arranging the SKU lineup in the store and
Yeah.
going, I can see how this is going to fit together. I can see this is the way we're going to have to pitch this. I already knew what you should probably buy before you arrived, in the showroom to see the line for the first time, because I understood your store, I understood your staff, I understood your customers in the store,
Yeah.
because I had worked in the stores and knew what was going on there. I knew what was going to work, and because I'd had a head start on my product line for 30 to 90 days before you see it.
Right.
And I've been working with it for 1 to 3 months before you even get a chance to take a look at it. It's like, yeah, I know how this is going to work and I know who it's going to work for. And sometimes our product designers would start going down a road and I'd be like, God, I don't know how I'm going to pitch this because I don't have enough product to go into your stores and fill the shelves the way I used to, because now I'm dealing with stuff that is like a left-hand turn compared to what you're used to.
Right.
And that's when it starts to get challenging, where it's like, now I don't know if we have the same kind of fit here anymore. So our side's going to have to be more forgiving on this if you are going to give me latitude to maintain that shelf space. I, as a sales rep and my company, we're going to have to be more forgiving with you for trying. If you do come out
Yeah.
and try with us, we're going to have to be forgiving on the results.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
I remember actually so good tip for anybody listening to this. I remember that exact scenario. One way so as a good salesperson, you got ahead of that is, I want to say like probably 2 seasons in a row. You brought me like way ahead of the buying season. You brought me down to like, once it was Boston, once it was New York, to see the stuff early. And I think it was so you could help the designers and whatever, maybe help them hear from the customer's point of view, so they don't get a little too far down whatever road they were going down. But also to start planning ahead better, right? Because if there was something we were biting into, you wanted to make sure you had inventory so we could repeat and buy more of it. So I think that the kind of lesson there is also a way to work with your customer, and maybe key customers, bring them earlier in your process of whatever service or product you're developing. Bring them in earlier, because the more input they have on what they know they can sell, like the better for you, right?
yeah. Yeah. And, I think, if I'm not mistaken, not only would we bring you down, but we would involve some of your key staff at certain points during the preview of the inventory. We'd involve some of your key staff to start to
Yeah.
inject some excitement into them on, what's coming around the corner, what's exciting from that brand. So it keeps them engaged. It makes them feel special that they're part of the sales process. They go back, and then the water cooler talk back in the back room of the store is exciting because they're talking about this new cool stuff that's coming from XYZ brand. So there's lots of things that you can do to inject the energy into the team that has to turn that product around or service around and sell it to the consumer, at the end consumer.
Totally. And I'm thinking, as we're talking about this, like even service businesses, like even a trades company, vendor to a trades company could work with that trades company to say, hey, I'm looking at my selection. So like I don't know, like a toilet supplier or a tile supplier or something like that. Like a tile supplier would be a great example. Instead of having your customer, the trades company, just come to your store or your distribution center, your showroom, and say, here's what I'm offering. Like some of your key ones that are good customers and important, bring them in earlier when you're selecting the tiles you want to buy, and say, hey, I'm looking at these things. What do you think? Where do you think it's going? And then they have say in what you're bringing in, which means they're going to be more bought into it and they're going to want to buy it. This
Yeah,
applies
do
to
it.
many industries.
Yeah, cater it, get the barbecue going in the back and a cooler of beer, and bring in a speaker, somebody that can talk about this new synthetic grout that is new on the market or whatever it is. And,
Right.
and
Yeah.
then preview a couple new lines of tile that you're taking a look at using, and here's the reps from those tile companies. They're going to talk to you about it and why we
Yeah.
think that these are going to be game changers. So yeah, let your customers help you decide what you want to stock in your store. There was something that the footwear industry used to do, and it was a similar sort of thing where it'd be called a trunk show.
Yeah, I remember those.
That's from the old shoe dog days when, their samples were packed around in trunks and they'd show
Yeah.
up. And it'd be like a bit of a dog and pony show where, not only did the retailer have their selection of that brand on the wall, but you could bring an assortment of other shoes and create a display. And that was more for the buyer and the owner of the store to watch their customers react to some of these other samples to see if there was anything that maybe they were missing in their lineup. And it would work. Quite often it would work. People would walk around with the same shoe in their hand and go, hey, could I get one of these? And it's like, well, we don't stock that one, but I'll talk to our rep and see if we can get some of those in. It looks like we missed the boat on ordering those. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, for sure. It's important. Involve your customer, involve your staff. You don't have to make all your buying decisions or business decisions based on all the information you're getting from them. But it is certainly important to involve them and have them be a part of that process.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, something you said a little while ago, I wrote down, I want to go back to. So we talked about some good tips for salespeople, and we already kind of shared one bad tip, which is don't say to somebody, hey, if you buy that, it's going to buy my sports car in the parking lot. But what are some bad tips? Like, what do you see salespeople doing that you don't think is a good idea?
Well, I think going back to your story about the BMW, this is our number one seller. Using those words to tell somebody to tell my client, this is our number one seller. They don't really want to hear about me and my company and what our biggest shoe is and what our number one seller is. I need to learn to reframe statements like that and turn them around so that it makes a statement about you, the client. And so, for guys like you, and one of the things I had to learn to do with you, because you came out of the sporting goods business, so, everything was sexy and exciting. And now you were into shades of taupe and beige and not loving.
And did it have laces or no laces? And
That's right. So I needed to learn to make it more of the point that this, albeit, is not going to be your flashiest piece of footwear on your wall. However, it's the one that you're going to pick up the phone and reorder most often, because sadly, most outdoor enthusiasts are driving Jeep Cherokees and they're not driving Land Rovers and, really cool 4x4s. They're just driving Jeep Cherokees. And this is what the guy driving the Jeep Cherokee steps into the car with. And that's your consumer. I know it because I've been in your store. It's not what you're going to wear, so I'm not going to send you a free pair this month, but we need to have these deep and wide in inventory in your store because this is what they're going to come knocking for. And so I tell the story. It might still be the story about my best-selling shoe, but I don't say this is our best-selling shoe. I frame the story so that you understand that this is going to be your best-selling shoe because this is who your customer is, and we have built this shoe for that customer. And getting the buyer out of the way and the buyer's mind out of the way on what they perceive to be important and letting them know that we actually know who's going to buy it and they shop in your store.
I'm thinking, I'm relating that to like other industries. And again, let's just say a trades industry as an example, but like, I don't know, homeowners picking marbled pink bathtub because like, I don't know, it's hot that season or whatever, or in fashion or something that season. Although I don't know, it's probably been a while since a marbled pink bathtub's been in vogue, but they're looking at it and the buyer's like, oh, I really want to buy that. And, the seller could be like, I get it. That's really neat today, but up to you. But what we see is sometimes that people buy that kind of thing. Like, what's your plan for your house, right? Are you going to sell it in 5 years or 3 years? If you are, that might devalue the house because it might be out of vogue by then, right? Then the buyer's like, oh, the new buyer's going to be like, I got to replace that. Mm-hmm. Or people that buy that stuff tend to come back in 5 years and want to do a renovation because, oops, they picked a bunch of stuff that's no longer in style. So knowing your customer and being able to say like, hey, depending what you're looking for from this will last longer, or the resale on this will be higher. Right. Like I remember, I know this isn't totally related, but it sort of is. We moved to Arizona and I had a Range Rover, which I was actually told by somebody, don't buy that SUV because it's going to be expensive to fix. I'm like, yeah, whatever. And then we moved to Arizona and I literally watched it melt in front of my eyes. Like freaking, I've never seen a vehicle just fall apart so fast because of the heat here. So I was so pissed off about that. I'm like, that's it. I'm going practical for the rest of my life. So I have 4 mechanics as clients, like car mechanics. I phoned all 4 and said, knowing me, I want practical. I want a truck. What do I buy? All 4. Toyota. Going to last the longest, least amount of repairs, resale value is higher. I'm like, done. I took that damn Range Rover to a Toyota dealership, said, you get that, and I want that one. It's like, but, and I know it's a funny story, but it's an example of, if I happen to know what I want, but let's pretend it was the salesperson. If they had talked me through, if that salesperson had talked me through that, that would have made sense to me. I would have bought that truck, right? I happen to get that information from my mechanic. Yeah, I totally relate to what you're saying. You got to know the customer and if it's a good seller, bad seller, whatever, just try to figure out what's in their best interest and let them know from that perspective.
Yeah. Here's another story or another scenario. So from a real estate perspective, I've had many clients that have bought a piece of property, a vacant lot, with the aspirations of building their dream home. And
Right.
maybe it's their primary residence, maybe it's a second home. But nonetheless, it's going to be their castle and they're going to build something really cool. And so selling them the piece of land is pretty straightforward, where you're not having to walk through and talk about the ensuite bathroom and this and that. It's more a process of, okay, this is
here's a tree.
yeah.
There's a little hill.
So you're selling them a bit of a blank slate. And then in many cases, you can be handing them off into a deep blue sea of conversations with architects and engineers and builders and developers and all sorts of things, where they're about to get snowed with information and not able to really make clear decisions because they're going to be experiencing everything for the first time in their life.
Right.
And, not many humans build one house in their life. Some people build a couple, but it's not an exercise you get really, really good at as a human,
Right.
unless you do it for a living. So I would always say to them, I'd say, listen, okay, here's your piece of land. You're going to buy this and you're going to embark on this really exciting but confusing journey of decision making that you're just not going to know what to do. And then you're going to start heading down a road because somebody pulled you down that road, and you're going to be talking about, putting Italian clay tile roofing on your roof because you saw one of those on your trip to Italy and you thought it'd be a cool thing to do in the mountains in British Columbia. And so I would always tell them, I'd say, listen, you're going to get lots of confusing information, but I'm here for you. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go out and get excited about building your home. But before you pull the trigger on anything, come back to me and run it up the flagpole with me. Because what I want to make sure is that we create something that when you phone me back 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 years from now and say, hey, we're done with this, and we want to do something else, that you haven't created a monster that we can't resell. And so I will give you the guidelines from that perspective to kind of keep you in the middle of the road so that you create something that not just you love, but the person after you will love as well. And that is me focusing not on the sale. That's me focusing on the next sale and taking care of the client so that I have their best interest in mind, not on just closing the lot sale, but on creating value in their life so that when they want out of it, the value is transferable back to them.
Yeah.
And so it's those types of relationships that you want to get into that's what you want to provide to your client, and that's what you want to receive from your suppliers. And it really doesn't matter what industry you're in, whether it's in real estate or welding or footwear. Honestly, it doesn't matter. You need to be serving much longer than the initial sale.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I love it. Sorry, I'm thinking, I know you and I have talked about this story off camera, but you're making me think. So don't make the customer feel like a piece of meat, right? So you're making me think of when I first got in the shoe industry, and I know you and I talked about this story when you were down here, but I'll never forget like dad and I got into that business together, and he'd already been in it. And he's like, we're going to go to this local shoe salesman little rep show and see the new stuff. And I'm like, okay, great. So he takes me to like this hotel that basically all the shoe reps rented out the whole hotel. And he's like, we're going to go in and we're going to meet a bunch of the reps. I'm like, okay, great. But we already had a meeting booked with one of them, right? So we're going to see the one rep, and it was Timberland shoes. And we walk in the front door, and I'm scarred for life from this memory. I remember walking in the front door and looking down the hallway, and it's like 2 sets of glass doors. I get through the first set. I go to look through the second set, and there had to be like 30 reps all standing in front of their hotel rooms, because they set the hotel rooms up as showrooms. And they're all standing there staring down like a bunch of sharks looking for like the next little tuna to swim through the middle.
You had to
And
run
I hit the brakes. I'm like, Dad, I've been around the block. I'm not walking down that hallway. That's not happening. So I phoned the rep and said, hey, you got to open your outside door. I'm going in there because I'm not walking down the middle of the freaking hallway. And I went in, I said, and you got to go close your freaking door when I'm in that room, because I don't want people knowing I'm in there. So saw the stuff, left, and then left. And I know he got shit later from all the other reps, but it's a funny story. But the point is, like, don't make your customer feel like that. That's like making a customer feel like a piece of meat on the end of a hook is not a good idea.
Yeah.
So that leads me to more of a question. Like, I know we already talked about what would you say are some bad things salespeople could do. And I know you already talked in depth about one, but any others that come to mind, like just from your experience, like looking at real estate, like salespeople or shoe reps or just anything, even as a customer living life and somebody tried to sell you something, any other sort of obvious things that maybe people are doing they don't realize is a bad idea?
Yeah, I think communication obviously is a huge part of sales, and whether it's the written word or the spoken word or even visual body language, that sort of thing, you need to be a complete expert in communication. Your written word needs to be precise and well written, and there's no excuse these days for spelling mistakes or grammar mistakes. Every piece of software on your computer and phone has that built into it. You just have to honestly take time to read it and edit it before you send it to a customer.
Sorry, so I'm agreeing. I have this debate with people all the time, certain people, but I agree with you. From the customer's perspective, when I see all the misspelling and the mistakes, it tells me two things. One, you didn't give a crap, like you don't care. And two, you don't pay attention to detail, which means what's the product or service going to be like after I buy it? Like, am I having the same problem?
Yeah.
So anyway, go ahead. But I agree with that big time.
Yeah. So the communication counts, and when it's written, they can sit, whoever's receiving it can sit and dwell on it. And, if the second word in is a spelling mistake and the second sentence in has a huge grammar error in it or something, then all of a sudden they're distracted from what the intent of the message
The real
was.
message. Yeah.
So, and then I promise you this, in sales, you don't need to give them reasons to be distracted. There's already enough reasons out there that people are distracted. So don't be the reason. So, and then when you're speaking as well, are you present? Are you with them? Do you know their name? Do you know their manager's name? Do you know everybody's name in the room that, is showing up? Do you know something about them? Do you know how to speak to them? Are they French and you're English? And is there going to be a communication barrier? Do I need to learn a few words in French or a few sentences in French to be able to at least break the ice and help the situation a little bit? Whatever it is that I'm about to say, I've only got a short amount of time to say it because they're not there overnight. And I've only got a few minutes to either blow it so that they're not paying attention anymore, and then the phones come out and their heads are down and they're looking at their phones and they have tuned out of the presentation.
Right.
Or do I have them engaged and laughing and participating and buying into the messaging that I'm bringing them? So what's the mistake? Well, we know what the mistakes are. You show up and you don't have your messaging ironed out. You don't know what words you're going to say. You don't know who you're making the pitch to. And maybe you don't know their names. Maybe you don't know anything about them. You don't know them. And if you don't know them, what business do you have selling something to them if you don't know them and you don't know how they're going to use it or how they're going to. If you're missing that side of the equation, then all you know
Yeah.
is inventory and you don't know your customer.
Yeah.
And in the world of sales, you need to be an expert on your inventory and you need to be an expert on your customer. And
Yeah.
if you can't have one and not the other, otherwise you won't be good at it for very long.
Yeah. Agree. Totally. Totally agree. Yeah. 100% agree. And sorry, you said something that you didn't say this, but it made me think of this. I think the other thing is if you really have the customer's best interest at heart and for whatever reason you get a no at the moment, it just might mean no right now, but it might be yes a week from now, a day from now, a month from now, whatever it is. I always follow up with people I talk to. And I literally, right before this podcast, I got an email from someone that I talked to like a year ago. Literally a year ago. And I followed up like every 2 or 3 months, just how you doing? What's going on? How's this going? And she didn't reply to me. She only replied to me once in that year. And I still followed up and I just got a reply today, said, I feel bad. I haven't replied. Here's what's been going on in my life. I absolutely want to work with you. Give me this period of time to get this thing sorted out and we'll work together.
Mm.
So versus a lot of salespeople be like in the heat of the moment, if the answer is no, then they treat them like crap and move on, right? And sometimes the answer could be no, obviously, because you didn't give the right information or help them understand why they need it or whatever. There's other things, but sometimes no right now doesn't mean no forever. It doesn't mean you burn the relationship. You keep the relationship, right?
Yeah.
Because you never know, or they might tell somebody else. I actually got I got a referral from someone. I had a meeting with like a strategy call. They didn't sign up or buy, but like 6 months later, they referred me somebody else and said, like, you got to go work with this guy. So that somebody else started working with me. That somebody else has referred me 2 other clients. And then one of those clients referred me somebody else. So there's like 4 or 5 transactions or clients from just that one that didn't buy. So I think as a salesperson, I don't want to sound salesy, but learn to farm versus just shoot and kill. But, learn to develop relationships and actually try and help people and you'll become top of mind. People will remember that. It's a huge deal.
Yeah, you're right. It's not about the transaction. And one of the training things I would do with staff on the floor, because many staff, and let's change it up so we're not talking about footwear all the time here, but many retail staff on the floor will see a customer walk in the store, go and engage the customer in whatever way that store sees best to engage the customer with a greeting. And then customer asks for one of these, please. May I please have one of these? And the staff run in the back room and go and get them one of these and bring out one of these and then go and ring it through at the till. And customer walks out the door and they'll turn to me and they'll say, see that? Just sold a pen. It's like, that was not a sale. That was you being a clerk. You took the order and you fulfilled the order and you rang them through. And 25 years ago when I was in the business, I would have not said this, but today I can say this. You will be replaced by AI and automation so that order takers and clerks are no longer required. And that's been going on for a long time in retail. But selling is not about getting somebody what they want. Selling is about giving them more than what they expected. And in the end, having them realize that it was the best thing for them.
Yeah, bingo.
So
That's the point.
Not leaving it just at getting them more than what they thought they wanted. That's can be a problem. That's loading the customer. Selling the customer is having them realize that they needed more than what they thought they needed. And in the end, it turned out to be the best thing for them. And that's where you create the relationship that keeps your job security as a salesperson for a long time. And the customer has a relationship with you because now you're their guy and they will never buy dog food from anybody else other than you because you are the best at giving me the right food for my dogs every single time, if you're in the dog business. So you want to be known as the person who is an expert at their product or service, and that people will run through walls to continue to come back and purchase from you and refer other people to you, as you've suggested. So it becomes so important to them that they need to talk about it socially and publicly to other people.
Right.
They're so blown away. And that's when you know something is working correctly.
Yeah. I got an example of what you're talking about. Because again, always want the listener to say, well, I can apply that to my business. But an example of that would be someone walks into Home Depot or whatever store, and because we're not getting paid by Home Depot on this podcast, so that
You're
wasn't a plug.
maybe you're not.
So, you walk into you walk into Home Depot, and sometimes they have like a greeter there and says, "Hey, can I help you out?" And you're like, "Yeah, I'm looking for drills. Where's the drill department?" And they go, "Oh, back to your point, they're like, oh, it's over there in aisle 6 or whatever, halfway down the left." And the person's thinking they're doing the customer this big justice by saying, "It's aisle 6. It's halfway down. Look to your left. It's on the bottom shelf." I'm being so helpful. I'm telling you exactly where it is. Versus what would happen. So a story to validate your point. What would happen if that person walked in, said, "Hey, I'm looking for drills." And the salesperson working there said, "Well, let me walk you over there and help you find them." And then on the walk said, "Hey, if you don't mind me asking, what are you looking for a drill for?" And you said, "Oh, well, I'm looking to, drill a hole." Cool. A hole in what? A hole in a 4x4 post. Cool. Why a 4x4 post? I'm building a gazebo in my backyard, and, I'm kind of handy trying to do it myself for the first time. And then he's like, "Okay, well, what's the purpose of the gazebo? Is it going to be for like eating, barbecuing, kids playing? Like, what are you thinking?" "Oh, well, we want to, spend time doing this and this and this in it. And we love to eat outside. So, because the weather's great, we live out in the island or whatever." And then the guy says, "Well, depending where you put it in your yard, have you thought about where the sun's setting and rising? Like, is that going to be a thing?" "Oh, yeah, it would be." Have you thought about what you're going to do to protect yourself from the sun, like blinds or whatever that roll down?" "Oh, no, I hadn't thought about that." "And whereabouts do you live in the city or this area? Are you going to use it in the winter?" "Yeah, well, here it rains a lot. So you might want to think about this kind of roof instead of that kind of roof." And then all of a sudden, by the time the whole conversation's done, that person's buying like roller shades, maybe a different kind of roof, maybe planters because they want to plant stuff on the railings, like all that kind of stuff, right? And none of that was really a sales job. It was just trying to help the person build the best thing for how they want to use it. And you're just, as an expert, guiding them through that journey and saying, "You're going to need this and you're going to need that and you're going to need that." And it's not selling them something they don't need. It's selling them stuff they're going to need. Like, so I'm going to give one more example of this. And I know you're an outdoor guy. In 2020, we bought an RV for the first time and went and traveled for 3 months. Best trip ever. Awesome. We bought a small one as a test, sold it for what we paid for it. So then in 2021, we're like, we're going to go buy a trailer, like a pull trailer. And we go to, I don't know, like 6 different places. And we finally picked the one we want to buy that fits our style, whatever, and buy it. And the sales guy was so excited to sell the trailer that I bought the trailer. And the next day, I went to a place right down the street and bought a whole bunch of all the stuff I needed for the trailer, like the hoses and the hitch and the frickin', the all that crap. Like, and in a trailer, that's a lot of stuff, right? Like jacks and blocks and whatever, right? Hoses, water filters, like all that stuff. I bought it the next day from their competition, and the company that sold the trailer sold all that stuff, and he missed like $1,500 worth of sales. Like,
So he sold you nothing because you went in,
pick the trailer.
you went in and picked what you wanted. He was the clerk who rang it through. He was jacked because he got a sales commission, and his employer taught him through possibly the way that they remunerated him or trained him, taught him to get that sale run through before you got cold feet and walked away. And then they celebrated. They popped the cork when you walked out of the store. See you tomorrow. We'll have the place, we'll have the trailer all ready for you. And they left $1,500 on the table. High margin, probably, because parts are margin.
Exactly.
And great point. And it happens all the time. And because sales people get caught in the transaction, staring at the transaction and not inside the client's mind on what their problem actually is. What is the problem that needs to be solved here? And it's not just, I need a trailer to connect to my bumper. I need the wheel chocks to hold it from rolling away. I need the hose to connect it to the water. I need the wire to connect it to the electricity. I need the silverware for inside the drawer. I need whatever it is, the solar panels and the this and then that. And the list is done.
I didn't even actually, the reason I was actually pissed off as a customer is I got home we're all excited. We got this trailer and we're like, okay, we're leaving in 30 days to go on I think we were going on another road trip. And all I have is a trailer.
Right.
That's all I have, right? And a hitch, by the way. I did buy the hitch there because I had to pull the trailer home. So that's all I got is a trailer. And I start, searching like, okay, what do I need in the trailer? And all these things start coming up. And now I'm actually pissed off. The freaking guy didn't tell me about that.
Right.
Like now I'm mad because he didn't help me. And I got all this other stuff. Now it's an inconvenience. The next day I got to go shopping again. So yeah, it's a big
Not at
deal. I
his
totally
store.
agree. What's that?
And not at his store.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah,
Totally.
it happens a lot. And, sadly, and I used to talk about this a little bit more when I was in the sales business. Honestly, sales used to be a fairly reputable and honorable type of position. You think back to the old days when somebody worked at a department store and they were in appliances and they were like professional people. They showed up, with briefcases and suits and ties and walked into work, and it was a career that they had developed, and they took pride in their list of clients that used to be maybe stored on a round thing that you turn on your desk called a Rolodex.
Right.
But these guys all had their secret formula on how to keep track of their customers and phoning them back and checking on them, and the old school way. Now you've got computer software that's doing that and dripping on people, and it's a little less personal and that sort of thing. And honestly, some people would tell you that the profession is starting to slide out of that business where it's not attracting the same sort of person to it. But I would argue that it is, and it can still attract a very high caliber human to that job. But you need to bring with you the understanding that it's not just closing transactions and running to get people what they need. If that's the way you view the job, then you're sadly mistaken, because that's not what it is. And I think, honestly, there's going to be some blowback on automation and AI, where consumers are helping themselves and then finding out that they actually needed somebody to help them with that, somebody who could give them the advice and listen to what they need rather than just following the direction of AI, because they'll make mistakes more than once. It'll cost them money, and they're going to want to talk to a real human that has the experiences that they need to make the decision that they want to move forward with. So I think there is going to be a good return to this, and people that own businesses right now and provide service or products to people ought to be preparing their staff to engage with customers on a more one-to-one basis and build relationships rather than just transacting.
Well said. Totally agree. Yeah, really well said. Great statement to close on. That was well said. Awesome, buddy. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so our producer likes to ask a couple questions at the end that we haven't heard before. So here we go. Question number 1. When did you guys meet first? Which year and where? So I got in the footwear business in 99. So you probably were like right around 2000, 2001, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I think I was.
By the way, I'm laughing because our producer just said you guys are old. Nice.
Yeah.
Thanks. That's great.
I think that I got into the business in 1996.
But with Rockport.
With Rockport in 96 as a tech rep.
When did you flip to Clark's? Because we started working together when you were at Clark's.
Yeah, so I'd been with Rockport as a tech rep in Calgary before you came on to R&R.
Oh, were you? Okay.
Yeah. So I had worked with
Slipper
and Joe and that stuff, and doing kind of in-store.
Oh, okay.
Early on, and then ended up getting into sales back in Ontario from, say, 97 till 2000. And then I think sometime shortly after 2000, I circled back and came back out west with Clark's, and that was our way to get back out west again. So
cool. Those are the good old days. We had some fun, that's for sure. We worked hard and played hard, which is the same mantra I say to people now, like work hard, play hard, enjoy it. To me, that's the work-life balance part. But yeah, I love it.
Yeah, work-life balance is not just about home and office. It's about all the relationships in between home and office as well, and making sure that it's that one's not a chore and the other is the party. You've got to figure out how to make it all enjoyable for sure.
Right. Sorry. And I guess the other part of that question was, and I don't know, maybe you remember because I don't. When did we meet first? Do you remember?
No, but I'll bet it wasn't when we were working directly together. I'll bet it was through
Rockport.
Yeah, you were probably working with Slipper, and he was likely your sales rep, and I would have been bumping into you in common meeting rooms and that sort of thing early, and
Right.
finally,
I actually used to work with Slipper back in the ski days back then. He was a Dynamique ski rep, or people call it dynamic, but Dynamique was the actual pronunciation.
that's right.
When I was in the ski shop, he was a Dynamique ski sales rep. And
Yeah.
he used to come by with another rep named Bundy. It was the Olin rep. But they used to come by and we'd play liar's dice on the counter at the ski shop, which people call poker dice, right? But so we all get the money out, play liar's dice, totally Slipper.
I am terrible at thinking backwards in time and putting dates to things like that. That is not one of my superpowers.
Okay, question number 2. What's your best or funniest memory from working together? I'll let you go first, but keep it. Okay, wait, time out. This is a live podcast. Oh, there's this one time we had this hamburger.
Yeah. I can't remember if you were here, whether you were here for this or not. So, but I'm going to start with this one as one of my funny stories on, working together. And this was at an event that we did for one of your stores or your Edmonton stores and we hosted an event up at West Edmonton Mall, and we had a big party for all the staff, and we ended up, having quite a few cocktails and some beer and food available in this one. And we rented a room at the Fantasyland Hotel at the West Edmonton Mall and hosted this big soiree.
With a heart-shaped bed and a hot tub?
No, it was better than that. It was a wagon for the bed, and there was these 2 horses' butts mounted to the wall with reins that went from the wagon over to the horses. And so it was like a horse-drawn wagon, and the bed was in the wagon. And it's a really good thing that social media was not around at the time, and telephones with photographs, because that event that we hosted, and I can't remember if you were there for that one, but between some of the leadership from the company and then certainly some of your staff, there was a lot of fun things that went on in that room that certainly deserved photographs and wall of shame type things. But it was really fun to see people cut loose and have fun doing that. But I would say, one of the most memorable or the fun times was, perhaps a New York trip where we were down in New York previewing some product, and we just kept it. It was just like one thing after another. We'd be out at night and having some fun. We get up the next morning not feeling that good, but hey, we should go down to the gym.
Right.
We get down to the gym and we go to work out, and who was there? Was it Magic Johnson? Magic Johnson was working out in the gym with us, and I was like, oh, there's Magic Johnson. And then, then we
have alcohol sweating out our pores.
So, and then we're off to, I think we saw one NBA game while we were there. I think we saw the Rangers play while we were there. And
we got a Rangers game because I used to be in the hockey industry. I phoned some of my old contacts, got player seats at the Rangers game.
Yeah.
And then the next night we got, because
floor seats.
One of my old friends was a vice president of the NBA. We got floor seats, like right there on the floor for the Knicks game.
Somebody was sitting right beside us.
P did.
Yeah, P did. That's right.
Right. That was cool. We had our own waiter, everything.
Yeah.
I remember it was pretty cool. We were having a lot of fun. I think it was towards the end of the game. We're a few beer in. And down in the floor seats, you get kind of your own bathroom. So I go up and you walk into the bathroom and there's nobody in the bathroom, which at a sports game is impossible. So I go in, I'm like, wow, this is cool. And P. Diddy walks up, the urinal stall right, like 2 stalls over or whatever. And I'm, 5 or 6 beer into the night. And I look over and he's this little guy dressed like a little hoodlum. And he's married to J-Lo or going out with her at the time or whatever. And I looked over and I'm about to say, what the fuck is J-Lo doing with you? And as I'm saying it, I look over his shoulder and one of the biggest dudes I've ever seen in my life is standing behind him. It's his bodyguard. And I'm like, I'm not going to finish that sentence. Like, what the?
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a fun trip. That was my first time going to Shake Shack. Remember, we made a big deal. We had to go to Shake Shack.
Yeah.
And now they're all over the place. But that was good. That was a good trip. That was fun for sure. And I remember we went to, I won't get into the whole night. I'll just say we went to a bar that, what was the name of the movie? Vince Vaughn and Jon Favreau made. There's a movie called Made, and it's Favreau and Vince Vaughn, and they go to a club, and the gangster at the club they got to deal with is P. Diddy, and that's the same club we went to before I saw the movie. I'm like, hey, I've been in that club. Anyway, I won't talk about the night in the club. It was sideways. Yeah. Thanks for listening to the More Profit, Less Stress podcast. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform and leave a comment or review as it helps with the algorithm. To learn more about us and what we do, check out our website. Until next time, go make it happen.